and welcome to the show. I'm Peter Whittle. Now, a week after week on this show, we talk to politicians, journalists, commentators, historians. But I have to say, it is the most satisfying thing to talk to people who are actually doing something about the problems and issues that we face in this country. A couple of years ago, I spoke to Tom and Hayley Bowen. They had just started a new school called the King Alfred School. I'm very pleased they're joining me today for a very, very much needed update on the success of this school. Welcome back.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good.
Good. This was about 2 years ago, wasn't it? King Alfred School. Can you recap for us and just tell us why you started the school in the first place, Hayley?
Yeah, we started the school. I was a teacher previous to starting the school, a secondary school teacher. And then we had our son Henry back in 2015. And like many parents, when you have young children, I started to consider what education he might receive. And I asked myself the very honest question, would I be happy to send him to one of the classrooms that I taught in? And the answer was no. So we searched for different types of educational options. And there was nothing there that really satisfied us as what we thought was a true and a good education for our children, but also for other children in our community. So we started to look into different educational models, and we'd done a lot of research prior to that and our own reading of history and educational models, and we discovered something called classical education. And then through that study, it really invoked a real love for this tradition and the liberal arts tradition of classical education. And then we gathered a small team, didn't we, Tom? A small team of dedicated parents and teachers who also wanted an education that would really set their children up for life. And we discovered, like I say, classical education, and we haven't looked back, have we, Tom? And we started to gather in local community halls and try and find out if there was an appetite for this kind of educational offering within our community, and there was. And that we started then to kind of spread the word and to find out if people would be interested in attending a school that was a low-cost private school, an independently run school as well, with following these methods of educating, which we focus on truth, goodness and beauty. And we found that there was an appetite, and we started, didn't we, back in 2021 with 9 children on roll.
9 children. How many children have you got now?
We have 30 on roll now.
30?
Yeah.
Really? And but it was a struggle to begin with, wasn't it? I mean, really, with the school starting the whole thing up?
Yeah, so we're in South Staffordshire, so the area known as the Black Country, a former industrial area. So not your ideal recruiting ground for a private school, but as my wife said, the idea was for a low cost private school that had traditional values and had a Christian ethos.
Right, and basically, did you receive any kind of hostility when you were starting it up? You know, because let's face it, the educational establishment is a very much, well, they call it the blob, don't they?
I wouldn't say hostility, but I think, and this is something we hope our school will rectify, is that people just thought you just have to wait for the government to drop this sort of stuff on your lap.
Yeah.
But that's not in keeping with the entrepreneurial spirit of Britain and the history of education in England.
Yeah.
It was often things like small Christian communities would get together, hire someone to teach them their students in the church hall, and it was only until about the 1860s that the state started to fund education. So we see ourselves a bit like the old Methodist schools back in the day, where people got together and started something from the bottom up. Very much a community-led.
That's a whole part of history that's almost been forgotten, hasn't it? That there were these schools, you know, and indeed in the large working class communities in this country, there was a lot of self-teaching, wasn't there, going on? You know,
yeah.
So that's been forgotten, really, hasn't it? You know, you say there, you allude to a classical education. I think I know what that is, but can you explain, maybe, you know, for viewers, what you mean by that?
Yes, so near our school in Dudley, there's the there was the old Dudley Grammar School,
Right.
and the head teacher there was, for a time anyway, was a famous preacher called Richard Baxter. And their mission statement, as we might call it now, was to teach children the institutes of the Christian religion and to read the classics. And I think that's kind of a good description of our school. But the best and most succinct definition of classical education, I would say, would be the cultivation of wisdom and virtue through the study of the liberal arts and the canon of Western literature.
Yeah. So basically, is it true to say you're majoring on the things that are pretty much ignored in the state school sector at the moment?
Yeah, it's a totally different, I suppose, end goal, what we're trying to achieve. I think that's what attracted us to classical education. There's a real clear end goal and destination for where the pupils will arrive at when they turn 16. They'll be well read, they'll be articulate, they'll be knowledgeable, and they'll be trained in the arts of logic. Yeah. And those are the kind of things that I think will put them in great stead for, not just the job market, but for them as human beings. And I think the emphasis on wisdom and virtue are just words that you just don't hear very often today. Those would have been the words that we would have heard for centuries, to inculcate children with wisdom and virtue and to train you as a free citizen. That was, that was the goal for an education that goes back over a millennia.
Yes.
And now there are different goals. And I think when things are ever changing in a system, sometimes we can lose our way. And I think with the classical model of education, it's tried and tested. And we've seen people now who have actually received this education. They're highly impressive people because not only are they knowledgeable, not only can they apply logic, but they're kind of versed in the art of rhetoric as well. And I think that's really important as well, especially in the day, the times that we're living in now, that sometimes we can't even disagree well. I think that art of proper debate and to disagree with someone, but still, you can still love them and disagree with them. I think these are lost arts that we really want to recover. So a very different, I would say, end goal to what we see in a more modern education system.
Yeah, so a classical education is supposed to be the education where there is a free man. So you could say that modern education points them to the job market and that's it. But a classical education points them to live a good life. So job skills are important because a virtuous man provides for his family and works hard. But there's also more to it than that to lead a good life, a good fulfilling life.
Yeah. Good life. You mentioned there as well, apart from wisdom, virtue, you also mentioned beauty. And again, I'd say that's a concept that's pretty much lost. I mean, we live in, it seems, times that kind of glorify ugliness, actually. How do you, not specifically, but how do you make children aware of beauty? How do you teach?
I would say you just expose them to what has stood the test of time.
Yes.
So there are works of arts that people still look at, even though that they're sometimes centuries old, but just the latest modern fad, we don't know which of those will stand the test of time.
Yes.
So so we generally look at things that are considered classics, and that's in literature and art and all manner of things, because they've stood the test of time. And cultures change and times change, but as an Englishman, you can still read the Iliad by Homer and appreciate it. And we live in a different culture from the Englishmen of, say, the 18th century, who would have read the same thing and enjoyed it, and going all the way back to Greece. So there are some things that are beautiful and speak to the human spirit, and human nature doesn't change. So I guess the best person to read on would be Roger Scruton. I think he would articulate what beauty is much better than I could.
I'd like to...
Yes. Has he been the sort of guiding light, or what he's spoken about, Roger Scruton, would you say, for you?
I guess his documentary on beauty, we really enjoyed that. I haven't read much on him, but I would imagine there would be a lot of common ground. If he were with us today and he saw our school, and if he were to say this is a good school, we think we're doing a good job, wouldn't we?
I'd like
I think
to.
you would.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think what you said, Peter, sometimes we do expose children to things that are, ugly. That can be from a very young age. That can be the kind of books that they're exposed to. Children are, a disposition to kind of laugh at crude jokes. It's, and I think there is an element of, training the affections. And some people think of these high ideals of beauty. But like Tom said, we're in a very working class area, very industrious. And there are ways, children, if you expose them to beautiful things, they really appreciate it, whether that's wonderful pieces of music, architecture. We study art as a serious discipline in our school. We've had traditional architect groups come into our school, and our children really appreciate the beauty in a building that people say worked on. The art of working on a building that you never get to see to completion because you worked on it for 40 years and it takes 100 years to build. There's something beautiful in the art of building something that is still going to stand in 1,000 years. So I think that kind of that training the affections is something that anyone can kind of aspire to. And I think you had a gentleman on here, I think it was a few years ago, I think from the Renaissance Studio, who was kind of talking about this kind of high culture that is accessible to us all.
Yes, I think that might have been a guy called John Long who set up teaching people how to draw in the Renaissance style. Been very successful on that.
Yes.
But again, he was a one-man band.
Yeah.
I mean, it took him time to sort of get started. What is the kids' reaction? How do they find it hard, this sort of your approach, or demanding? I mean, presumably if it's demanding, it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we teach about virtue, so like diligence and prudence, and that there's no escaping that sometimes your studies are hard and you have to work through. But we believe that classical education works with child development. Yeah. It's not child-centred, but in the early stages, you'll often practice reciting poetry or remembering dates of history or Latin grammar, for example. And the children they're naturally inclined to remember things much quicker than adults are. But they do enjoy showing off. So when they learn something, we get them up in front of the class and we'll say, recite such and such poem, and they're really quite proud to get up and speak in public. So it can be hard. It is taxing, but it's not like we're beating it into them with a ruler, which might be a negative stereotype for traditional education.
Yes, it's not exactly. The idea that they should get up and maybe recite a poem, I'm not sure how much that happens in schools anymore. I mean, I'm not. But therefore you are teaching them as well. I think you mentioned it earlier, speaking in public and maybe actually how to debate in public, as you say.
Yeah. I think our children specifically like the arts, so we do a lot of productions, don't we, and plays. And I think having a section in the day, which is only 10 to 15 minutes of the daily recitation work, I think it puts them in good stead because they learn how to stand up straight, how to project their voice. So when they go on to performances, they really enjoy performing because they've been trained in that art. So for many people, some of the things that when they look back to their time at school that they used to dread was reading aloud in class. Our children do that every day, so they don't have that fear. So the thought of going into a workplace and delivering a presentation, our children are kind of delivering that on a daily basis. And we've had some, quite high-profile visitors to the school, and they've commented on the confidence of the children. And even if they can't recall a fact, the resilience that they have to just stand there, take their time and think about the answer, and that they don't crumble under pressure, and they've got their peers on their side. They want each other to do well. So I think it's a really lovely environment to be in, because they're there's this high standard, but I think if you set that bar high, children rise to it. I think sometimes we forget how much children can achieve, and I think it's a shame and a disservice to them when we set the bar really low.
Yes, it's the, what's it called? The poverty of low expectations, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
sort of, or the tyranny of low expectations, actually. Yes. I mean, you know, you've been doing this for, well, we spoke 2 years ago,
Yeah.
but a little bit longer than that. What are you most proud of?
For me personally, I think the fact that we're teaching English boys and girls about the story of England as part of of Western civilization as a whole, a story of how Englishmen have their freedoms and liberties, and we were conscious that not everywhere in the world had the freedoms that an Englishman was born with. And I think the children are picking up on that through stories of in history like the Magna Carta or King Alfred, or even in fiction like literature of Robin Hood. They're picking it up there. So we're certainly passing on our cultural identity. And then I would say also just that the fact that the children are much further ahead than where we were. So I'm particularly proud of what the children have achieved so far in the studies. And also,
what age are they so much?
so it would be the youngest now. Would it be 4 or would it be 3?
Yeah, 4 this year.
So 4 to 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're way ahead of their year, I think. Well, yeah. This, I mean, I can hear people listening to this at home sort of saying, that's what I want for my kid or whatever. Increasingly, because people are so dismayed about education now, there's a lot of talk of homeschooling. You know, I don't know whether you have that much, but I mean, in America, it's become quite a big thing. Not so much here, but it seems to me that there are all sorts of drawbacks with that. In fact, what you're offering, you know, is far more advantageous to a child. I mean, you've got a real structure. It's a proper school and all of that. Where are you going to go with this? I mean, do you want to see a whole load of King Alfred schools, you know, sort of across the country, or
maybe not King Alfred schools, but we do want to help other people set up schools in their local area. Yeah. So it's very much a local community thing that we've set up. But Hayley's working with other groups across the country and going to help them set up.
Yeah, so we've launched, since we opened the school 4 years ago, we've been inundated with other people across the UK wanting to start schools in their communities. So that led us to set up a network that's called Classical British Education. And that network seeks to provide a space where we can come together, we can demonstrate how you can do this, so we have all the practical knowledge of how you start a school from scratch, how you build a team, all the legal requirements you have to go through, kind of the property search and all those regulations as well. So we're very blessed to be currently working with 4 other schools, start-up schools at the moment. There's a few more as well, but there's 4 who I think will open potentially in the next 12 to 18 months, and there's a few more that should open, I would say, in the next 2 years. Right. So it's really exciting. We've got 2 in London. There's one in Newcastle, one up in Scotland. So real widespread. Yes. And these are, again, groups of fellow teachers and parents who want to provide a classical education for their children. So we're really honoured to be running that network, because people want to know how they can do this. And for us, it's not just about our community that we're in. We want to see children across the UK having access to a fantastic education that's going to stand them in good stead for life. So we're really excited about the work that's going on there. You know, it's a great central place for conversation. We're a registered charity now. I'm not sure if we were the last time that we came on.
I was going to ask you that. You're a charity now. Great.
Yeah, so we're trying to put on different conferences and events where we can gather those groups together, gather some seed funding for those groups, and for us to establish a head office. We've had 4 different schools visit us this month since we've been back in September. And they come and observe, what does this teaching look like on the ground in the classroom? How do we do this? So that's wonderful. It's a real blessing to be involved with those other groups.
Yeah. How is it how is it you're changed your own your own personal lives? How has it changed? Because you were a teacher before, Hayley, weren't you?
Yeah.
I was in construction at the time.
You were in construction. When I spoke to you on the phone, you were up on the roof, actually.
Yeah.
So they still get you doing all
Yeah.
that, don't they? But what is the difference been in your own lives, do you think?
It's been hard work, a lot of hours, but when you've got children, you're very much very motivated. I think we move heaven and earth to give our children the best education, especially because of the richness of the cultural inheritance of Western civilization.
Yeah.
We want them to be exposed to the best that's been thought and said and done. And unfortunately, at the moment, I don't think the state schools are offering that. So we just felt that we had to do it. We felt that we had no choice.
I think they're more than not offering it. I think they're kind of giving people a kind of anti-history of it, actually. I mean, I know you're not being political or whatever, but what you're offering is what was considered a quite natural thing to be offered in schools, wasn't it? You know, I had my English history books, R.J. Unstead. Is he sort of published, is he, or?
I don't know. In the
do you know what I mean, though? There was this kind of, he used to do all the history books. It was called Unstead, R.J. Unstead. I'm going right back now. Actually, it's showing my age. Actually, let's have a look at, just tell us what they are, actually. These are some of your textbooks.
Yeah, so this one's the famous men of...
Want to hold it up?
The famous men of Greece. So we try and start at the beginnings of Western civilizations, with Greece and Rome and Jerusalem, and work up, and it builds a layer of knowledge that you can sort of build on with each year.
And then that that was a few stages on, I guess.
Yeah, a few stages on the Renaissance and Reformation stage. So
nice picture of Florence, sir.
Yeah. So the questions in here they seem really advanced for children, but like as we say, we expose them to it time and time again. So they quickly pick up on things like that. So they're going to be really cultured children.
And also, I understand that you're going to be going into quite a bit of detail about England's constitutional history, aren't you, as well? I mean, that's an ongoing thing, isn't it? Because they just don't know about this, do they?
Yeah, so one thing me and one of the teachers have noticed, that people who've come out of higher education at the moment seem to think an Englishman's rights come from something abstract like the UN or the European Courts of Human Rights. Yeah. And we've forgotten all about an Englishman's liberties. And if you read just a little bit of history, you can see that the Englishmen of the past were fiercely protected of their rights and liberties and the English common law. So we want to develop a little booklet that would accompany our history curriculum to tell them how that develops with the main events, things like the Magna Carta, for example.
Absolutely. And presumably the Glorious Revolution,
exactly,
1688, things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things we take for granted are actually not taught anymore.
No, and that reminds me, when you asked Peter about what are the biggest achievements of the school, we asked our teachers that before we came on today, and our history... well, he's not our history teacher, but he's got a great love for history, hasn't he, Mr. Faulkner? He said the one of the things that he absolutely loves about being at the school is he gets to tell our island story. Yes. And that is the textbook we use for a lot of our history, to tell history as a narrative. And the children absolutely love that, going through story by story in order. And he because he loves history, and I think, again, that comes back to the traditional model of education, is the teacher is the master of the subject, and they have some wisdom to impart. Yes. So this teacher, Mr. Faulkner, as we mentioned, he says he's got the best job in the world because he gets to teach the children what he spends all of his time reading, in his own time. Yeah. And I think he will be quite nervous in a few weeks' time, because I think David Stark is going to come and watch one of his history lessons. And so that'll be interesting for him. Yes. He'll have to be on his game.
No, but yes. I mean, that wow, they're going right to the top there. I mean, that's fantastic. And so you've got 30 kids. So by the end of their year's time, what would you say you'd like that to be? I mean, it's rather saying how long is a piece of string,
Yeah.
but how many could you cope with?
Well, the next step for us is to move to a bigger building.
Yeah.
And we weren't able to really take any more children this year because we'd gone from 9 children to 22 to 30, and we've kind of had to stay there because we've outgrown our current site. So our next step is to move into a building of our own. When you start something new, you want to see how it goes. So we started in this smaller building. We just recently put in an offer on a building. We're waiting to hear back this week if that's been accepted.
Okay.
And that's a former school building, and we can have a capacity in there for 200 children, so we can take from our 30 to 200. And we've just recently extended our age range. We started as a primary school. We've go up to age 13 now, and the plan would be to move to the bigger site and to go all the way up to age 16. So we're hoping we can be in that building by the next school year. That is our strong desire. Yeah. We need to move, don't we, desperately now?
Yeah. And basically the kids are the ones that are in the school, the children in the school at the moment are drawn mostly from around your area.
Mm-hmm.
Is it pretty much local people?
Some commute, don't they, up to, probably up to an hour is the biggest commute, but, that takes a lot of commitment to do that from some of the families.
So you're essentially, if people are coming from different parts of the country, wanting a bit of guidance, what they want to do what you've done, what general sort of philosophical advice would you give people who want to do something like you've been doing?
I think the general advice would be, you've got to be serious about doing this because it does, like you say, it does change your life. There's not going to be a massive team of people perhaps committed, willing to salary sacrifice to do this. So if you can get a good core team together who are really motivated and are hardworking and competent, that will certainly help. And I think people with their own children have that natural desire. Not all, you'll have some who don't, who are still motivated to do this. But I think having children in our case helped us because it made us strive to make sure this school opened in time for our children to be able to attend. But I would say, it won't be easy by any stretch of the imagination, but you'll never have a dull day afterwards, and you'll have a life full of purpose.
You must get tired, though.
Yeah, I think Hayley will be getting tired soon, won't you? Hayley's expecting our third child.
Yeah, you might see.
When is it?
In Feb. I'm halfway there.
Okay.
So, our third child.
Well, you've got to open another school then.
We have to.
Obviously, the hardest thing, one of the hardest things is raising money to do this. Now, you are a charity, aren't you? I understand that, in fact, when we last spoke, that actually did bring forth some donations as well for you. But you must spend a lot of the time just simply fundraising yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really hard job, isn't it?
That's probably one of the hardest things because we, of course, want to be concentrating on the curriculum and what we're teaching. I'm the head teacher of the school, but you also need to be the business manager, the fundraiser.
Yes.
And because we're an independent school, we don't receive state funds. And because we do this on a break-even kind of setup so people can afford it, our fees are £6,000 a year.
£6,000 a year.
So we operate under what the state threshold. The state operates on £7,500 per child per year, and they may have a class size perhaps of up to 38. That may go up. And we don't, we have £6,000 a year, and that has to pay absolutely everything. So for us, the fundraising is a massive part. And if we could have some help and donations, that would make our life, a lot easier because we have to fundraise on top of, running a school and being a full-time head teacher. So that's tough.
So if people want, for example, well, there's two things really, aren't there? If first of all, if people want to help by donating to the school, big or small, what should they do? We can put things underneath our video, but is there a place they should maybe go to?
Yeah, there's two places they can go. If they search the King Alfred School, and they'll need to search the King Alfred School Dudley, because there's a number of King Alfred schools, and if they search King Alfred School Classical Education, will come up, and also the website Classical British Education.
Yeah.
They both have links. There's the bank details are on both sites.
Right.
We also have a stewardship giving account that some of your viewers might be used to using. You can give as a guest and gift aid on there as well, and via PayPal. So you can give 3 different ways on each of those sites. So the thing that we're currently fundraising for right now is the deposit for our building.
Yeah.
You need a 40% deposit for a commercial mortgage, and we have so far we have a quarter
really?
of that.
40%?
Yeah. So we've raised 10%, we've got a 10% deposit. So, but we need to raise 150,000 to be able to get a deposit. We'll get a mortgage for the rest. Right. It'd be lovely to not have a mortgage, but we know we can sustain. We can pay a mortgage. So we're desperately fundraising for a deposit, because that enables us to move, and we have to move from our current site quite soon.
Deposit 150 grand. You've got to get. And when it comes to, obviously, a lot of people are beating their way to your door anyway, so to get for advice about how to set these up. But if people could offer general practical advice, practical help to you in some way, I don't know, people volunteer. Do you have volunteers at the school?
Yes, and we're holding on Classical British Education on our events page. We're holding a Zoom conference later on this month to invite people if they want to get involved in this, whether that's in an admin capacity, perhaps they're interested in doing podcasts or some articles, perhaps they have business experience or curriculum experience. We want to open that up. We don't see it as a small, just for us. We want this to be a movement that grows. So we would invite them to get in touch, because we need more workers for this task, don't we, Tom? Not just us.
And I think it's worth saying that there's never a perfect time to start something like this, like a school. We were expecting our middle child when the school opened.
Yeah.
So life's messy, but you have to get stuck in it, and it is worth it.
Yeah.
And like we said at the beginning, you can't just wait for the state to give you everything.
Yeah.
You need to revive that entrepreneurial British spirit.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, things are very bad, aren't they, at the moment? Generally, I mean, nationally. So the ability, the opportunity to be able to talk about something so worthwhile and good and successful is just wonderful. I mean, thank you so much, for coming and telling us all about it again. I can't think of a better thing to support at the moment, can you? Whether it's financially or but I mean, financially is really, really important, I would say. Sorry, I'm doing an appeal on behalf of you.
Thank you.
I think you've made a very good case. But if you see below this video, you will see the links to where you should go. What a wonderful enterprise. In some ways, it goes to the heart of what we believe here at the New Culture Forum, for example. So, I think this is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Tom, thank you very much. Hayley, thank you very much. And, maybe in a year's time, when you've got the school, the new, the bigger building, you can come back and tell us about it all.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it for this week. We shall be back next week, but in the meantime, have a great week, won't you? Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello. If you're enjoying the New Culture Forum channel and you believe in our mission, may I invite you to join our membership scheme at the link below or on our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Our work is more important now than ever, and we have great plans ahead for the future, but we can't do it without your support. From as little as £3 per month, you can help ensure that we continue on our mission. As a member, you'll receive a range of benefits, including access to exclusive content, invitations to our private events, including here at our studios, free copies of our books, and much, much more, including, of course, our famous NCF mug. If you aren't able to become a member, then please help us by clicking this button and subscribing to our channel. It's completely free. Just remember to also click the bell icon so that you can get notifications when we post new videos. Thank you.